Hello and welcome to Chapter 16. My name is Erin Kolpeck and I'll be facilitating for you this week. The topic today is educational technology principles and examples in a variety of contexts. Here, Spectre will examine a few contexts and then three variables within each context: the communications and interactions, the environment and culture, and the instruction and learning that occur within each context. Then, an example or a few examples will be provided within each context. But first, let's test our knowledge and see how much we already know. True or false? Using British spelling for a course to be used primarily in the USA is not problematic. True or false? A private development company can use an official government seal without obtaining prior permission in a course being developed for that agency. True or false? K-12 teachers typically have a great deal of flexibility in choosing instructional goals and learning materials. True or false? Mastery-based learning is most common in a college or university context. And finally, true or false? Knowledge and skills involved in designing and developing learning and instruction in one sector are likely to transfer easily to a different sector. The first context we'll look at is the K through 12 education context. Again, there are three variables within each context that we'll have a look at. The first is communications and interaction within the context. In K-12 education, our participants are students, teachers, parents, school and district administrators. Communication and interaction strategies differ a great deal because goals differ. An example would be that language appropriate for a sixth grade student learning earth science is quite different than the language that would be appropriate for the teacher developing those lessons on sixth grade earth science. In addition, there are several variables that are unique to the environment and culture in the K-12 education context. Here, the environment and culture can vary a great deal. For example, a class of 30 students would have a very different environment and culture than a class of 10 students. Another key item to note is that high-stakes testing brought about by the No Child Left Behind Act has created a culture of standardized testing and accountability. This raises concerns that teachers are unable to be responsive to learner needs. And many teachers find this discouraging. Next, instruction and learning in the K-12 education context. Here, curriculum is aligned with standards that are developed outside of the school setting, such as within a state agency. The pacing is typically determined by the standard curriculum, regardless of individual student performance. Spectre also reminds us that the goal of public education is to develop informed and responsible citizens. However, as mentioned previously, high-stakes testing and standardized curriculum aren't necessarily the choice of the teacher, and some find it discouraging to meet student needs. Two examples are provided. However, the one that I found most helpful was the Web-Based Inquiry Science Environment, or WISE, webpage. Here you see an example of a scientific unit and some activities that correspond. This is a great free online resource for science education in grades 5 through 12. The next context that we'll look at is higher education. Within communications and interaction in the higher education context, which is post-secondary context, includes the community, technical, and vocational colleges and universities, such as ourselves. Here, individual progress is no longer assessed by standardized tests, though there are some graduation exams. Adult students are encouraged to ask for elaboration and faculty support to support their individual learning needs. The environment and culture in the higher education setting includes various learning environments and cultural contexts. For example, in some universities, faculty is encouraged to be addressed by first name, whereas in some universities, they prefer to be called by their professional title and their last name. This affects the culture of the campus. In addition, professors may have differing values on the course and topic interest. Next, instruction and learning is different in higher education because there's a sequence of courses within a discipline, and instruction is typically around various learning activities. Higher education instruction and learning differs from that of K-12 education in that self-reliance and self-directed learning is required for higher order reasoning and problem-solving skills. Let's look at an example of a higher education Here, the Carnegie Mellon University offers a free online course. As you can see on the left, there is a wide variety of topics that are presented. And on the right, I chose to look at Chinese vocabulary. This is a great free resource that anyone can use. The next area or context that Spector examines is the governmental agencies. Communications and interactions look quite a bit different within this context. In this context, they may prescribe the use of specific words and associated meanings that should be included in learning materials. For example, one would need to know that a tornado watch is different than a tornado warning. In a tornado watch, the conditions in the weather are conducive to a tornado. However, a tornado warning means that a tornado has been spotted and has touched the ground. Communication can be challenging in governmental agencies as they come in contact with many people from many different backgrounds. So it's important to keep this in mind. The environment and culture in governmental agencies also varies significantly from one organization to another. For example, within the military organization, it's very, very formal. Thus, learning activities and materials must be aligned with the environment and culture. Instruction and learning. Governmental agencies mandate courses and programs of study that are performance-based. Individuals must perform at a specified level prior to advancing to the next level, or mastery-based learning. This is unique and different in that contexts of K-12 education and higher education, because neither are mastery-based learning. The mastery-based instructional approach allows a student as much time as required to achieve proficiency. Here are a few examples of online tools or education platforms that can be found within the context of governmental agencies. The first is the National Environmental Health Association. This provides free online public health courses. Open Up Ed provides MOOCs on various topic areas. And the final example is the National Taiwan Normal University Mandarin Training Center online. And this as pictured below to the right, is for professionals who want to learn Chinese and work in Taiwan. The final context that Spector examines is the nonprofit and non-governmental organization context. Communications and interactions here are often global. So, the language and forms of interaction must be carefully crafted. They must also consider the difference between highly developed countries and developing countries that have minimal infrastructure. Within the environment and culture are also several other important factors in this context. Environment and cultural views of instructional materials and learning environments must be taken into consideration in each culture and context. Materials are then determined by the environment. An example is a learning course that is provided through a smartphone device would require a stable connection. However, some remote areas with unstable connections would require shorter instructional sequences. Within instruction and learning in this context, it's best to do a needs assessment and a requirements analysis for larger instructional systems in order to find out what the learner already knows. It's also recommended that educational technologists develop and test early prototypes with end users to assist in preserving valuable development time and effort. Two examples are presented here. First, the International Federation of Red Crescent Societies is a free online public health course. They also offer disaster preparedness and recovery. To the right, you see an example of the United Nations World Health Organization, or WHO. Topics range from aging to project planning. Now let's have a look and test our understanding. True or false? Using British spelling for a course to be used in primarily the USA is not problematic. That is false. We should attempt to use the language and the spelling that occurs within the context. A private development company may not use an official government seal without obtaining prior permission in a course being developed for that agency. So the answer is false. K-12 teachers typically do not have a great deal of flexibility in choosing their goals and learning materials, as those are often prescribed by curriculum standards from outside agencies such as the state or federal government. Mastery-based learning is common within governmental agencies. However, they are not as common in a college or university context. And finally, the knowledge and skills that are involved in designing and developing learner instruction in one sector are not likely to transfer easily to a different sector. Therefore, educational technologists must be aware of each context as they create the learning module. Here are the references for this chapter. And next, for our discussion on this chapter is, you are tasked to redesign a middle school writing lesson on the parts of speech for use in a college or university context for students who are struggling with writing skills. In the lesson activity provided, list any changes that you would make to meet the needs of struggling adult learners. The lesson is provided at the link below. If you decide that no changes are needed, explain why. Thank you. This has been Erin Kolpeck with Chapter 16. Have a good day.